Hi everyone, Lisa Soames-Peck of Spellbound Miniatures here. Welcome to our YouTube channel and the Book Nook series. Today we're carrying on with lighting the back of the Book Nook. So we're going to backlight the window. And to do that, I've chosen some LED lights, and this is kind of plug and play. You don't need to be able to do any wiring, so that's why I've done this, but of course you don't have to choose these. I got them on Amazon. I'll put a link to similar on our page, and they're LEDs and they're the RGB ones, which means they change colours, and they've got the self-adhesive strip on the back and you can cut them to whatever size you want. This one, it's a little bit fancy, but because it was a book nook and I thought you don't always want to be taking it off the shelf and switching it on and off, so I got these with a remote, which is a little high tech, isn't it? So I don't know how this is going to look on camera, but you can switch them on. Oh, they're not too bad. This is a little blue, but it's kind of white, blue-white. And then you can change the colours. So if we wanted more of a red or an orange for a sunset, that's more yellowy orange. What do they call that? Yellow orange or something. A bit more there, it's more subdued. So I thought that would be quite good fun to be able to change the colours that are behind the window. So that's what I've got. They just come off a battery pack. So the one thing we need to make sure of is that when it's in, that the infrared pickup, which is this little thing here, is, you don't want to bury it at the bottom so that from the front the signal from the remote doesn't get through. So I've kind of played around and found that we want this on one of the side walls, sort of that, so that you could angle it through the window, and then we want this so that it will come out through the door, so it's easier to change the batteries. So we want, ideally, I don't know if you can see that, rather than having this close in there, we want this to end up further out, so that if it was too close, it's even more difficult for the signal to get through. So we want to end up with the outer layer near the outer edge. So kind of, you can just roughly work this out. This is all I'm doing, is just going round so that I know where to start, working backwards. So just roughly going, because I'm going to start on at the end on the inside, if you know what I mean. You will do in a second. So that's there. There's quite a lot of lights. You don't have to have it this long, but I found that I needed a good length to get a good amount of light. So that is up there, the end is up there. So I'm going to take it all back out again and start with the end up here, but as close to the corner as I can get, because you don't want to be able to see the lights through the window. So it's easy to peel the backing off, and then peel the backing as you go. Don't take the backing off the whole thing. It'll glue to itself. It's quite good glue. So I'm going to stick that in. Give it a good press down. There. Can you see that? So you work out for the length that you've got where you need to start. And this is nice, easy to work with. Just do a little bit at a time. And if, I mean, the glue's, it's 3M glue, so that is quite good, isn't it? But if it ever comes off, I'm sure you could just use some other glue and re-glue the LEDs on. It feels really nice, it's like jelly. So I'm just going to slowly work my way round. And then I'll come back. And then when we come back where we're about to overlap the first bit, we just need to slightly start bringing the new one up at an angle so it goes over the top of the first one. Can you see that? It's just gone up and over where they overlap. So, the infrared, I think it's infrared, is there, and the battery pack is just out of the way at the bottom. And this does have an on and off, so if you knew you weren't going to use it for a while, you could just switch the whole thing off, but you can leave it on. And then, if we turn it over, hopefully it'll work through the window. Then you can't really see that on camera. Let me turn the light off a second. Let's put that over there. Put it on white. There we go. Doesn't that look cool? So that would be when it's off and then when it's on. I really like that. So then we could have the sort of more sunset colours. We could have a spooky blues. Cool. And that's on a grey background. So, let me just... And you could, I guess you could secure that in with something. But if we're going to put a white background in, I'll just sort of wedge this in for now. See if it will stay in while I turn it over. Oh, it's not level because of the doorknob. Right. There. I think it definitely illuminates more. So I'm really pleased with that. Okay, so I've just secured that now with a piece of double-sided sticky tape, so it's not permanent and I can remove it if I want to. So I'm going to glue this in now, and this is a very tight squeeze. It's made exactly to fit, but also the sides were bowing in slightly. So and because this fits inside, I need to have glue on all 4 edges, so it's going to be a little bit of a sticky, yucky mess getting it in as well. I'm wondering if I could do like half and half. Glue the bottom in and then wiggle it down. So I'll do what I can. I haven't yet put... I could put foil on the back, and I'll try that once it's all in place, I think, rather than trying to balance everything. Yeah, I'm going to make sure that these are all stuck down. So I'm going to glue this in place now. So that actually, it helps a lot having the door open, so I could go in and almost push these walls out and squeeze that in. So that's all good. I might need to just sand a little bit off the door now, because this side's been pushed in a bit. But I'll leave that to set up and then we'll come back. Okay, whilst that's setting up, the only other thing that you might have noticed is on the front here, I've got a little bit of a frame. This is just made out of chipboard, and we'll put the updates to this in with the bundle. So if you've already bought the bundle, you can just go and re-download it, and the updates will be in the bundle. And there's kind of two, I haven't glued this yet, two versions of the front, we thought. A solid front with an opening little door, or you could also open this front as well as that little door, or the frame, the same as the chipboard I've just shown you, but this also, we hinge this one, and then we have some layering craft board pieces. Is that the right way around? And you could put acetate in there to create almost like a picture frame, or you don't have to have anything in there, it could be open fronted. But if you wanted to create a diorama that you can see all the time but the dust doesn't go in, you could do this version, and then we just hinge it so you can access the pieces if you want to move things around or add things. Or you can have this version where we build out a door frame and a front step, and we actually have this door that opens and shuts, or you could fix everything in place and still hinge this piece. So that's up to you. So we'll start with, I'd say, the most straightforward one first, and that is just this plain chipboard frame. That's exactly the same as we've glued on already, because if you imagine if this was opening, you need it to shut onto something, and this here actually strengthens the edges of the chipboard as well if they were bowing slightly. So we have two chipboard pieces, and then we've just got these craft board layers, and let me just, you can see, hopefully, can you see? They're just slightly smaller than each other, and they just create a lovely beveled edge. If you wanted more of an effect, just cut more pieces. So if you liked the, keep them lined up, if you liked the, you'd want more there of the inner layer, so that would give you a deeper one, or you could cut more of the outer layer, and you just simply glue those, that onto there and that onto there. So we'll do that quickly. I'm going to glue my two layers first, because always put the glue on the smallest layer, which is that one. I'm going to just line the outside edges up, and then check that the overhang is even all the way around. Can you see that craft board? The same colour on the same colour is never easy to show on camera. So I'm going to press that under my granite slab while that dries, and then once that's dried, we can put glue on the back of it, and we will glue it onto there. If you wanted to put acetate in, you might want to sandwich the acetate between this chipboard layer and the craft board frame pieces. So do that now if you want to add acetate. PVC perspex needs to be a fairly stiff material so that it holds its shape and doesn't bow too much, and you can just cut it out to the size of the rectangles, like the outer one. So that would be that one done. I'm not quite sure, I don't know if I'm going to use this frame or not yet, so we'll just imagine I've glued that one on. And then the next one is the solid frame, but with the opening door. And again, these craft board layers all just line up with each other and go back in steps to create a moulded effect. So we'll glue that one onto there first, I think. and they kind of self-locate because we've left this bar at the bottom, and then you can build out those as many as you like. So if you want a thicker step, cut more than we've put in the file, just copy and duplicate them and cut more, and then you can just create a thicker step. Again, just glue that. Tacky glue is fine. If you wanted the door to open outwards, you would probably want to put the hinges on now and glue this over the hinges, but I want mine to open inwards. Or do I? Trouble is, if it opens inward and there's furniture in there, would a door normally open outwards or inwards? I think it would open inwards, so I'm going to do mine opening inwards, which means the hinges need to be on the other side. So if you want to put hinges on, scoot forward. I'll put the timestamp now, how to do hinges, and then if you want to, and you've already got them on your door, this is the point where you'd have your door in place with the hinges on this side, and you'd glue this one over to cover the hinges. So go and watch that bit and it will make more sense. If you want to do an outward facing door. If you're not bothered, you can carry on with this way of doing it. So we literally just glue that down, press it down, and I could press and let everything dry, but I'm just going to stick all of these layers on first and then press them to dry. Make sure you get them in the right order. Yes, that's right, so it's that one next. And they're quite easy to line up, as long as you get the bottom bit lined up. The top kind of finds its own level. Take any excess glue out, if any squeezes out. And then put the last layer on. Make sure you're happy with the edges. If you can see anything that's slightly out, just squeeze it over a little bit. Looks good. And then I'll just press the whole thing to dry. And then while we're waiting for that to dry, we've got the door. And there's two options on the door. You don't have to have this hole cut out. I wanted to create a kind of a little peephole so that we're going to put a grill on the front, and you can imagine that someone could look into the room and check that the scribe's working hard without opening the door. If you didn't want to do that, we'll go over to Design Space now and I'll show you how to remove that from the file so that it just cuts the door without the hole in. Okay, so here we are in Design Space. We've put the file in 12th scale in this instance. If you need to enlarge it, click on the magnification at the bottom, and they come in grouped. So the first thing you want to do is ungroup it. And then it's very simple. Click on the square or rectangle that you want to remove and hide it. And that simply takes that cut line out of the file now. We've got the long piece here ready to cut in craft board. If you want to do the faux plank look, and then you can unhide it again if you decide you do want to cut the window. But if you do that, if you hit make it first, you'll notice that although you've unhidden it, it doesn't show in the door space anymore. It's actually on another mat, because what you need to do is go back in, select both the sort of window and the outer piece and attach them, and then that will secure the window cutout within the door space. So then when you hit make it, it's popped it back in to cut it out of the door. And then you'll notice you get some craft board pieces like this. If you want to make a planked effect, you can cut those. And then you also get 3 other pieces. This one fits in there if you've got the hole, and then you have the tiny top piece for that. Or if you didn't cut the hole, you also have the extra craft board piece there. If you can imagine there's no hole, to create a completely solid door. So that's up to you. I could think you can imagine just gluing that strip on the same way. So what I like to do is start from the outside and get those lined up with the outside edges first. Then I do the middle, and then it's easy to put the piece effectively 2 and 4 in at the end. And then always make sure you're going to put the glue on the right side of this piece, because then suddenly this is either a left or a right piece. And if you didn't want an opening door at all, you could still just glue these pieces on without cutting the door out, and it would give you the effect of a faux door. Then I like to put the middle piece in, because you've got the top and the bottom straight edge to line up with. And you could measure it out if you wanted to and make sure everything was exactly equidistant. And you'll see there's just enough of a gap to create some light and shade. But you don't have to measure it. It's a something of a millimetre of a gap. So they don't just butt up to each other. And then make sure you've got this one the right way around before you put the glue on. So that's that. I'll press that one whilst it dries. So we've got this one and it's dry, and you can see there's the outline of a step, but it's no deeper than the frame. So we are going to glue all of these strips together. I've already done them in pairs, so they're a little bit thicker than they would be. And then I'm going to glue the pairs together now, and I don't think that's enough of a step for me visually, so I'll probably cut some more of those and glue some more to create a bigger step. But we'll do these first. You can see how thick that's ended up. So what we can do for those, you'll have seen me use them before, is just these clamps. And they apply nice even pressure sort of on the top and the bottom. So I'll leave that to set up and we'll come back again. Okay, let's talk about hinges. So you could hinge either of these sort of front pieces. If you remember, this would have acetate in it or not, but if you didn't want to hinge it, don't put acetate in, otherwise you're going to create a sealed box, unless that's what you want to do. We could hinge the whole of this piece, or we could just hinge the door. And I think I might do both. I'm going to hinge the whole of this and the door. And I've got several hinges here. So we'll have a look and a play. None of them are what I would call fancy decorative hinges, so you're not really fussed about making sure they're on show. and this is a nice flat hinge. They're wafer thin, so they're quite good. More, I would say, for, let me get the door out, that's finished pressing. If you wanted to make this an outward hinging door, you would want to put this hinge on the outside of the door, so that, and that's why I said to watch this bit before you glue any of your layers on, you would have wanted this on the door and then that under the craft board layers so that they hid the hinge, and this craft board layer you'd have glued it over that hinge. So you don't want very thick hinges. So the craft board layer, if you imagine it didn't have it on already, you could put your hinge there and then you would get your piece of craft board and you could glue that over there, and because it's wafer thin you wouldn't even see a bump in the craft board. So that's how you would hide your hinge. And the outside of this, I'll use the actual book nook, although it's on an angle because of the door handle at the back. Let's look at the top. You can see the bits of tape. I'm still drying the back. If we want this whole thing to hinge, I'm going to use a slightly more robust hinge, a bigger one. And you've got to play around and make sure that your hinge opens the way you want. You want the barrel on the outside. So can you see there, the barrel is on the outside. So when it's flat, the barrel sticks up, and then you literally would just go like that, bend it down. So it was like that, I've gone like that, and that's how we'll fit it on the back of this front piece and then onto the side there, and then effectively it will open up like that. If you had it that way round, if you can imagine, the barrel gets in the way. So we want the barrel out for these hinges, so you will see the hinge at the side. I've got some other hinges here as well. They're quite nice, so I might use those on the outside there. They're not quite so stiff, so if you can see that there, that's the way we want it. So it will sit there, and I just super glue my hinges. And if you felt that the glue might be in danger of or the hinge coming off, you can always, if you imagine now, that'll be like that on the inside. You could cut this shape just in craft board and line the whole of the inside of this door with it and cover that hinge, or put a strip down. It's up to you. So I always find it's easier to put the hinges on the thing you want to open, so like the door first, glue those on, and then they self-locate onto the side. So that's the way I do that. So this piece, because the door is actually cut out of this chipboard, it's a very exact fit, and to open and shut, it's going to catch, if you think, because it's a thicker material. So you might want to sand just one edge down, or the bottom and the side. And also, don't forget, when you have hinges, they will add some depth, depending on where the barrel is, to the door opening and shutting situation. So that's pretty much gets stuck in there if I do that. So if we imagine that was the hinge there and it was glued on, that when it goes out and then back, you just need to make sure that you don't glue the hinge too tight that it actually can't open or shut. So sand the edge if you need to. It doesn't matter that we've glued this bit on because we can just sand the craft board the same. If you find any of the edges fraying, you can always run some super glue down there, and then when the super glue is hardened, it gives you an edge that you can actually sand. It sinks slightly into the fibres and creates a sandable edge that doesn't fray. And then just keep going until you think it fits in and out more easily. It'll still need a bit of more sanding yet, so I'll do that and then I'll come back. Okay, I've sanded a fair bit off of it, and when we place the hinge, this is going to be an exaggeration, but we don't want it to be sort of the barrel over that way too much, and we don't want it to be over that way too much. If it's like that, it's not, it kind of pushes the door over too much into the frame. So get it, I like to get it, I don't know how close I can get this, like that, so that the barrel is just in line with the edge of the door. So that's what we're aiming at. You can draw it with a pencil as well if you want to beforehand. But make sure the barrel is up in this version. The barrel's up, and we're putting super glue on the bottom edge, and not too much because you don't want it to squeeze out and get into the hinge. So just put some super glue on, and then it's almost easier to bring the door up to the hinge so you can see the daylight behind it. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you that, will that? Can you see that there? So the barrel is nice and clear of the door, and then don't use your fingers, use something else to push this down and make sure it's evenly pressed and glued all the way along. And so of course if you were making the opening door that way, you would kind of it's the same thing, except this would now be the outside, and you would have the frame that you would glue down once you'd fitted the hinge. So to have an inward opening door, you can do the door after you've done these frames. If you want an outward opening door, do the hinges before you add the frames. So we'll add the second hinge now. But if in doubt, just have a play before you glue anything, and it will soon become obvious which way the hinge wants to work. So again, we'll make sure that we've got the barrel facing up, and we're going to put glue on the bottom. And you can see I'm not even measuring where I put these hinges, I'm just going to eyeball them. If you really want to get them equally spaced, by all means put a pencil mark where you'd like to put your hinges. And I'm going to do the same thing and bring the hinge up. I don't know if I can show you that. And then you feel the super glue will just suddenly take when it's in the right place. There. And again, use something other than your fingers to push that down. And you could cut another set of these planks and do the inside of the door, especially if your door was going to open outwards. You would see the inside of the door. And actually, if I'm going to hinge this whole front so that it opens that way, we will see the inside of that door too. So I will cut another set of craft board planks, and then they will cover the hinges and look nice. And I can also cut another set of these for the inside, but I'll make sure that I fix my door in place before I glue those frames on. So I'll let that set up for a while, because although super glue is pretty quick to grab, sometimes it will lift off if you just don't give it long enough to take hold. Okay, I've cut some more pieces now, so we're just going to glue these on the back of the door. And you can see that if your hinges are thin enough, they just fit on, cover the hinges, and you don't have any large bumps in them. So we'll just glue those on. So you could press that now while they dry. And the other thing I did was cut some more of the pieces for the bottom step. I've already glued them into pairs, so I'm now going to double them up and glue them more so we can make a thicker step. And this is the one from yesterday that had all the clamps on it, so I'm just going to basically recreate that again. And then we can just keep gluing them together to make as thick a step as we want. And I quite like the dimension of that. I don't know if you can see that. That's a good, I like that. And don't worry if you can see the layers, we can sand this down, stain it first maybe, then super glue it. And you can get a nice smooth surface on it. So I'm going to leave that to dry. Okay, now the door planks have dried, we can install it. And this is the same. If you were going to be doing an outward opening door, this is what the front of your book nook front would look like. So you'd have it, hang on, with the hinges on the front. So if it's, you want the hinges on the side that you want it to open. So if this was now the front, this would be opening like this. So if we imagine this is the front, or this is the inside if you want it to open inwards, we've got the hinges there. I'll probably need to do a little bit more sanding on this door to get it to open and close, but it's good to do that once you've got the hinges in place. So what we're going to do is just put some super glue again on the underside, and they will naturally fall into place. You just want the sort of small gap and the similar gap as you can get, but it's so small you won't be able to see it. And we can do these one at a time as well, rather than have two lots of super glue going on. So you put your door in place, we're going to put the super glue on, and then literally just let it fall over into its natural place, and that's where we'll press it down. So have something to hand to press it down with. And again, we don't want too much super glue because it might glue up the hinge. And then let it find its own place and just press it down. And then we can do the other one. And do let those sit for a while before you try and open the door again, or it will just lift those off. So for the inside now, and assuming you are going for the whole opening front, or if this is the outside, you'll want to cover those hinges now with the frame layers. Now this is my inside, and if you can imagine, this fits on the front of the book nook, so the floor level actually comes a little way up this piece. So I can't use the whole of these frame pieces where they had the arch on the bottom, because then this would stick out where the floor level is and we wouldn't be able to join this on. So I've cut those off. And the other thing you'll notice is that this wants to kind of be exactly where the hinges are, especially the hinge barrel. So you've got two options here. You can just cut a notch out of this frame where the hinge barrel is, or you can just use the other two frames, and because they are graduating and getting smaller in layers, this one just fits over the hinges anyway. So you could glue that one on, and then the smaller one again on top. So that's up to you. I'll show you how I would notch out the hinges, and then you can decide which way you want to do it. So we can fit this on there, and we can see that we just move it over slightly. Make sure that you've got the apex of the arch is in the right place. We can see that. You could feel it as well. It's always a bit good to go a good bit either side. And we want to cut around that hinge, the barrel of the hinge. So I'll get my cutting block back in, mat. And you can just make it as deep as the hinge barrel is. It's not really an exact science. You could measure the whole thing, but you only need it to do it enough to clear the hinge, and if it isn't on the first go, we can cut some more off. So I'm just going to cut the notches first, the side ones. And this is only one layer of craft board, so it's very easy to cut. So that just fits over like that now. Check it's, yeah, that's all good. So I'll go ahead and glue these frames on. So I'm going to press that now under my granite slab and let all those layers get nice and dry. Okay, this one is dried and pressed, and I'm going to have mine opening inwards, but at the minute, because I was going to put a standard frame on here, I've got the too big a frame insert. So let's look at the actual frame that matches that. So it's the exact same shape, and you would have layered this up with acetate and the 2 craft board layers, or however many craft board layers you want. If you wanted to hinge this, again, you want to ideally put the hinges on before you fit the craft board. And you'll notice, I don't know if you can see that, the barrel, which is the way around this hinge wants to work, really needs to be recessed. Otherwise it sits on top of this piece. So rather than recess the whole of this edge, I think it looks neater to notch out a piece in here for the barrel. And then that will sink down in, and I could possibly do with slightly larger hinges for this particular frame. And I think I'm going to put 3 on this side, and it will be the same for this piece. Again, we would notch out the barrel so that this can then open like that. So I'm going to show you on this version first, and we can choose wherever we put the, I'll just get that out of the way because it casts a shadow, wherever we put the hinges. Probably want to have one in the middle, and can you see that? I kind of don't want to keep zooming in for these and zooming out for the big pieces. So that's about the middle. So again, just get the pencil and mark either side of the hinge. And then this will be covered with the craft board layer anyway, so but we'll still make it as neat as we can. So I'd like one there, one I think I'll stop in line with this line there, and the same on the bottom. And then just take your knife, and we're going to start cutting down through the layers. And we don't want to go all the way down through, we just need to go down enough so that the barrel of the hinge fits in there. And then just peel a layer out when you've got down through 3 sides. And you just don't want to go all the way through. And if the idea of hinges completely phases you, then you could make the top just do the frame and glue it on with no acetate in. So you can reach in and change things around if you want to. Now I don't know if this will show. Can you see it's just beginning to, oh, it doesn't want to focus. That's it from the top. And it's just getting slightly thinner. And then just always, you've got your hinge there to check it up against. And I've cut these actually quite a bit deeper than I needed to in terms of going in that way. But it's always good to have a practice as well. So if you're not sure, you're not confident, just get a spare bit of chipboard and have a go at doing this anyway. And then just keep having a go. Obviously the one thing you really don't want to do is choose a hinge where the barrel is thicker than the chipboard. Right. That's about right for there. So you can tell when you've got the right depth because the hinge is flush on the top. So we've got the barrel is underneath, it's fitting in that gap, allowing the right angle to come down, which will glue onto the actual book nook, the body of it, and then this is flat on top. So I'm going to do that now on this piece because this is what I actually want on the finished piece, and you go and have practice if you want to do that method too, and then we'll come back. Okay, so will you be able to see what I've done there? Yeah, just notch them out, and quickly, the more you do them, the easier they get. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of super glue in here now because chipboard is in layers and can fray. I want to just shore up the area that I'm going to glue the hinge to, so make sure that it's nice and kind of solid rather than fraying bits. So I'm not putting a lot in, just enough to sink down into the layers. And I'm also going to put a little bit on the top where the main bit of the hinge is going to go. And this is going to get covered if you want to. Say if you were doing this version, you would cover the hinge anyway with a layer. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do on the front of this door yet. I know what I'm doing on the sides, but not on the front. So I'm just going to let that set up a little bit and dry off. And then once if you do put the super glue on, if it's too thick, you can always sand it back down again. You don't want it lifting your hinge above this surface. So you only want a very thin layer, but again, I've got a bit that's too thick there, so I'm going to wait for it to dry and I'll sand it down. So when you're happy that the super glue's dried, if you're doing this method, we just want to now put the hinge in. So you make sure that the super glue's dried in there, because you don't want the actual barrel of the hinge to get stuck in and not move. So make sure till it's good and dry, and then have a dry fit. Make sure you're happy. If we were being really super professional, we could actually, where this main part of the hinges, the sort of the butterfly wing part, if you know what I mean, we could also take a layer out of the chipboard to sink by the depth of that as well. But I'm not going for kind of that look on this anyway, so a little bit rustic is cool. So we only want super glue on this bit, and I think let's put it on the hinge. Where are we? I like to do it on this edge more, so to keep it away from the actual working part of the hinge. And I like to, I don't know if I can show this to you, it's just kind of let the hinge drop in and find its own way. And then use something to press it down. And you can do this in any order. You could put your hinges on before you even do the door. Because you can see that it's a little bit rocky now because of the door frame, but whichever way you want to do it is cool. And then just make sure that still works. So I'm going to carry on and do the other two. Now you could use any parts of the frame, even from the more traditional square frame, and if you imagine, you could just cut it off on this edge here so that it fits down and covers those hinges. So I might do that. We've got, I mean, you could either continue it round to this step or go straight down. Quite like the look of that. I think I'm going to try and just cut off where, so allow it to return and then come down where the step is. So let's have a go at that. I could measure it, but you know me. Cool, I'm happy with that. So you have a play around and decide what look you'd like in the end. I like that. It covers up the hinges. It looks like a frame, but it also looks like the door front. So I'm going to glue that on. Yes. Make sure you put the glue on the back and not the layered front. And just give it an extra squeeze down this edge where the hinges are to make sure that the craft board kind of moulds itself around the hinge. Oh yeah, I'll use some clamps on this. So I'm putting a clamp either side of the hinge and on the top. So either side and then one on the top. And use pegs if you need to. Go around the outside of the rest of it. So I'll leave that to dry. Okay, so that has now dried. That's nice and neat. And if I get this in now, it's difficult. I want to get you closer in and then further away so you can see everything I'm doing. But if you lay that on there now, all of the hinges just naturally will find their way down onto the side. So we do the same thing. We just put the super glue on. We'll do all three at once. And again on the edge away from the hinge, and then we will put this down. Which way can I show you? In that camera, I think. We're going to bring the hinge down onto the side. I don't know if you can see that, but and you'll feel it naturally rest there, and can I show you? I've got too many opening doors at the minute. So just look at these two hinges, I think, and we can see those. We'll put super glue on, and then if we do that, we can hold it level and press it and then go round and just let it kind of naturally go down. 3 hinges is quite a lot at once. Well, we don't have to do 3 actually, do we? We could just, yeah, we could do 1 at a time if that's easier. So let's do the middle one. The one thing you've got to make sure is that the top and the bottom of the frame front, or the door front, and this are level, and then we'll do 1 hinge at a time. I think that might be easier than all 3. So let's go for, the one nearest me first. Always have a dry fit. Do whatever you're comfortable with. You'll have gathered by now, I kind of do whatever feels the most natural, easiest thing at the time. And let's not use our fingers. Let's use this tool. So it's easy to line up the end that hasn't got the super glue as well. And then we're going to push that over and down. That's it. We don't want our fingers in the way, so we use a tool and just hold that. Press it down. And again, if you were doing the other frame, this version now, it would be the same, exactly the same. So I'll do this top one next. And again, make sure, have a dry fit, see where it fits naturally. You might want to tip this slightly to get the super glue to flow onto it, or you don't need to use super glue, you could use tacky glue. Apologies as my arm is right in the way, hold on. Make sure your door is level. Get your fingers out of the way. And press that one down. And we've just got the middle one to do. So I'm going to leave those set up now and come back. So here we are, it's glued and set now, and it opens and shuts. You might need to think about catches, doorknobs. I'm going to create some faux hinges just to look the part on here. There's also the sliding bolt tutorial that we did for the stable door. You might like to recreate one of those. Have a think about the hardware. You might need to cut out some of the elements of the frame if you're going to do a sliding bolt. And to cover the sides, I'm going to do similar to what I did with the room box. I've cut out silhouette pieces, and I'm going to stain this a darker brown and then leave the chipboard natural, and then that just sort of covers up the hinges there and decorates the side of the box. I've got another one for the other side. I did this in black, but I actually like the idea of staining craftboard more, so that's just to add interest to the sides. And on the front of this door, what I think I'm going to do is create some grill with wire, just to finish that off, as if you were peeking through the grill in the door to see what was happening in the room. And so when this is on the book nook and the lights on inside, it will just be a tiny little sort of teaser for you to look in and see the room through there, or you could then indeed open this and see the whole scene. So I think that's it now. I hope you've had fun. I'll put up some photos when I've got all these bits stained and glued on. Do send us photos, tag us in on Instagram or Facebook of your book nooks. Also, do subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to be bringing out Halloween book nook, so that'll be good fun. And I've just got the tapestry to finish off now, because some lovely gold fringing has arrived for the tapestry, so I'm going to do that now, and then it's nearly finished. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.